This is the popular face that you see around Halloween from Mexico. And she's usually mistaken for Santa Muerte. And who is Santa Muerte? Saint Death. And welcome back to the Brac Shop. This is the platform to the esoteric, and it comprises of the paranormal, the spiritual, and the unexplained, because I feel it'll all be explained one day by quantum physics. And Halloween. And this is the face we see quite a lot around Halloween from Mexico. And she's usually confused with Santa Muerte. She's actually Mictecacihuatl, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly. But she's the Aztec god for the underworld. Her and her partner rule the underworld. And she's often mistaken for Santa Muerte, the Lady of Death, or Saint Death. And who is she? Well, let's have a look. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it, like it, and subscribe so you won't miss out on any of my other episodes. Santa Muerte. Well, she's the Mexican saint, and she's a folk saint because she's not actually based on anybody. But her following is growing. She has something like 10 to 12 million followers, and it's the fastest growing religious movement at the moment. Santa Muerte, historians think, actually started around the pre-colonial times in the 1500s when Mexico was colonized by the Spaniards. There were the original indigenous people like the Aztecs, the Mayan people, and a lot of other indigenous tribes there as well. And they had their own gods and gods of the underworld. And that's where Mictecacihuatl, who was the god of the underworld, who, and as I hope I've pronounced that word correctly, her and her partner would rule the underworld. And when the Spaniards came, obviously, they brought Catholicism, Jesus, Our Lady, and they also had the saints and also the Grim Reaper. And the indigenous people actually thought that the Grim Reaper was a saint and worshipped him as well. And basically, all of them merged to form Santa Muerte, the Lady of Death. And she's also became known as Saint Death, the Bony Lady, the White Lady, just to name a few names as well. And in the late 1790s, Inquisition documents from the Spanish government actually were saying that they were punishing people for worshipping Indian idols for favors and justices. And that's when Santa Muerte basically disappeared. All records of her disappeared for about 200 years, until about the 1940s, when she started to re-emerge, and basically wearing red. And for women who had love problems, men that were playing around on them, leaving them, or they couldn't even get, so they would pray to Santa Muerte. However, it started growing, and in 2001, that is when Santa Muerte really exploded, when Enrico Romeo actually put a statue of Santa Muerte outside her house as a thank you, because she actually saved her son from jail, got him out of jail. And so, as a thank you, she put a statue of Santa Muerte outside her house. And that's when everyone started to come and actually worship her. And that actually started a whole range of temples being set up. Now, Jonathan Magaria Vargas, he set up a temple and actually made a 75-foot statue of Santa Muerte. And he was starting an international church. However, in 2008, he was actually gunned down. Now, his mother, who didn't even follow Santa Muerte, then decided to continue his work and set up a whole chain of temples and places of worship around the country, and now carried on by her daughter. And it's just taken off. Because Santa Muerte, you could say, is the saint of the people. She's actually a folk saint because she's not actually modeled on anybody like the saints, the Catholic saints. They were people that were originally alive and canonized. But Santa Muerte's just evolved, you could say. And people just worship her, and the followers are growing. The wealthy keep it quiet because she's not actually recognized, and she's actually condemned by the church. Because basically, her followers are usually criminals and people at high risk. But the thing is with Santa Muerte is that she doesn't judge. She's the Lady of Death, a bit like the Grim Weeper. And if you look at her, she carries a scythe and a globe with her, which basically represents that she rules the world with death. And her scythe can cut down anybody. Sometimes she's also depicted with an owl, which is basically a messenger, and an hourglass. An hourglass because that's the end of the life. But then again, she can always turn the hourglass over again and extend a new beginning to someone. And she's worshipped for different things. As I mentioned, a lot of women worship her to help them in their love situations. And that's usually when they get a figurine of Santa Muerte in red, representing love. And different colors represent different things. And I'll have a look at my list at a few of the others. There's gold for abundance and money. Purple, a change from negative to positive and asking for good health. And silver for good luck to bring money and success. Amber for health. Black is for vengeance. It also helps with protection, and also protection from black magic as well. Green for justice and legal matters. Copper to break negative energies. Blues for wisdom, and white is for purity. So Santa Muerte helps people with lots of different things, and she doesn't judge. And why she's so popular with criminals and people in jobs that aren't so favorable, if you know what I mean. Because they can't usually pray to go to the church or ask a saint if they want to carry out something that's negative or bad. Some people do, but like during war, they'll pray to God to fight off the enemy. But that's with the blessings of the government. But at the moment, there is nothing like that. So they can't actually ask for something like that. But with Santa Muerte, she doesn't judge, and she'll grant you your prayers. Bad, and also the good ones as well, which is why she's so popular with criminals. And she's also the saint that has answered the most prayers and in the quickest amount of time at the moment. It's a pretty impressive track record. But maybe it's coincidental. Maybe people are manifesting these things themselves, but she's helping them by the looks of it. And people will give her offerings for what she can do for them. And it will be anything that they like, whether it be food, drink, cigarettes, marijuana, anything, she accepts it. And apparently, obviously, have granted their prayers. People have got out of jail. People have survived things. According to the Sun newspaper in the UK, from an article back in 2014, that actually said that Santa Muerte was gaining in popularity and very popular also with the people and criminals and people with high-risk jobs, because she's the Lady of Death and everyone is going to die eventually. And basically the idea is to have a quick, painless death, especially with gang members and gang leaders. They don't want to be a long, painful death. And they pray to her that they'll have a good death, quick and painless. And she's becoming to be one of the fastest growing new religious movements at the moment, through Mexico, America, and spreading to the rest of the world. And at the moment with about 12 million followers. And basically, when you think about it, it's just going back to the days of before religion, before 2,000 years ago, when we had different gods. And she's basically another one. What do you think? Do you think she's blasphemous? Do you think she's another god? Do you think she can help? What do you think? And being a skeleton, well, it does represent death and where we'll all go eventually. And maybe in the past, skeletons were something that people would be scared of because we're not always familiar and exposed to that sort of things. But with modern day television, films, and Halloween and the supernatural, we're getting used to them. So we're not so frightened of them. After all, there is a church in Rome that has actually made the Cappuccino monks in Rome that has actually made artwork out of skeletons. Apparently past monks that have been in the monastery. They've actually have rooms and rooms of artwork made out of human bones. So that's a different way of looking at it. Some people say it's sacrilegious. Obviously not them. Santa Muerte, Lady of Death. What do you think? Write your comments down below. Let me know if you think it's blasphemous, sacrilegious, or just another god. Or maybe I should say entity. Because people do worship different entities. It's all pretty on the underground, but people do worship other deities as well. So let me know what you think. If you've enjoyed this, spread the word, share the video, and also please like it. And if you haven't subscribed as yet, please subscribe and click the bell so you'll be notified when I release another video. And if you've enjoyed it as well, also, why don't you buy me a drink? The link is below, and it's greatly appreciated if you do, and it helps me and the channel. And have a look at our other links down below. You might like something there. So in the meantime, I hope you'll join us next time. So until then, stay well and happy.